Oh, hamstring. Up. Sniper, take the other picture.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you can formulate opinions without having true facts.
I'm telling you, think about it logically for just a second.
Dear Reds fans,
welcome back to the Zebra Zillionaires. It was a tough one yesterday.
Live from Chatterbox Sports Studios, it's Off the Bench with Tom Brenneman.
Well, good morning. I'm back. Better than ever. Not really better than ever, if we're being completely honest. My voice, hey, I actually feel perfectly fine. Yeah. It's just that it sounds like I've been smoking Marlboro Reds for the past 20 years.
Cowboy killer.
2 packs a day. Virginia Slim Light 120s is what my mom used to smoke, and which is why I've never smoked a day in my life, is because I just can't stand the smell of cigarette smoke, because that's just what I've had to smell my entire childhood. But that's here nor there, I think is the term I'm looking to use. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Perhaps if you're a smoker, you could probably pick one of those up at United Dairy Farmers. But Tom is out today. He'll be back tomorrow, we are told. So you're stuck with me. I've been on a trip for quite some time. We won't get into that. Yes, I had a good time. And the Packers won a few games that I didn't think they'd ever win, which made the trip a little more enjoyable. But we come your way every single day, Monday through Friday, from 10 to 12. And you can find us all over the internet. I've been told, supposedly, we're on Rumble. I don't know whether or not we're on Rumble or not. The reason we're on Rumble, though, is because when I put in the rundown here on the monologue, is that I said we should be on Rumble, but we're not because we have bad employees. Now, obviously, that's not serious, but Casey obviously took it very seriously because somehow, magically, within the 10-minute window of me putting that in there and us going live, we're magically on Rumble. So congratulations to people that watch Rumble. I've been told not that many people do, nor should we care. But you know what? I guess we are.
Got 3.
3 people watching on Rumble.
The 3 Magi.
So if this is the first time you've ever seen Off the Bench, it probably would be better to come back another day and watch this show with somebody that actually has a voice and another guy called Tom Brenneman, who's maybe a little bit better at this than me. I don't know. Some maybe say it's debatable. I don't think it's debatable at all. You can join us in podcast form. Just search Off the Bench with Tom Brenneman on all the podcast platforms, and I'm sure Kirby's, I almost said Kirby Smart. That's not good. Nick Kirby.
Kirby is smart.
And all the gang will probably have that up lickety-split. Legacy is a term often used, though, and that's what I was thinking about this morning coming in. It's often a term used at the end of someone's career, right? What does this mean for their legacy? Michael going to the Wizards. Everybody, what does this mean for his legacy? Phil joining Liv. Michael Phelps trying to get his 8th gold medal in the same Olympics. Messi winning the World Cup. These are all things that we all discuss around sports about what does it actually mean for their legacy. Well, the Baseball Hall of Fame just announced yesterday they have some new members. Todd Helton is a guy that probably boosts some confidence about something that we'll discuss maybe a little bit later in the show if we have time. Joe Mauer was discussed at length yesterday on this show. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, the 3rd catcher to do so. And you have Adrian Beltre, who discussed yesterday, played a very, very long time at a high level and kind of, I don't want to say backdoored his way into becoming a Hall of Famer, but maybe that's what the term you'd like to use. I don't know. But here's the thing about all of those guys. I just don't know if I care enough about the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yes, I care about baseball, but I just come in today and I personally could care less. Now, Helton, to be fair, registers a little bit on the radar of me because why? He spent his whole career in one place, was very similar in nature to a guy like Joey Votto, who we all hope will make the Hall of Fame. maybe that's the only reason I don't care, is because it has no real impact on players that I genuinely enjoyed or loved, or anyone that I watched. Yeah, I've seen all those guys, yes. But unlike Reed, I never was enamored by Joe Mauer, and maybe that's just because of the time frame in which they went in, which is, I guess, the old reason of the Baseball Hall of Fame in the first place. But the reason I don't want to say care, or the only reason that I would say that it just doesn't mean as much as it maybe should, is that this whole Baseball Hall of Fame is littered with inconsistencies everywhere. There's double standards, there's politics, there's idiotic voting processes. Pete Rose, okay, Barry Bonds, Shoeless Joe Jackson, Roger Clemens, and Alex Rodriguez are not in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Not. But Bruce Sutter is.
Invented the slider.
And you think that we should care about this a lot?
Or the split.
Why should I care about a Hall of Fame that doesn't have the guy that has the most hits in it, also doesn't have arguably the best player that's ever played ever in Barry Bonds? Imagine having some kind of establishment to where you're supposedly the place that everyone wants to get into, but you ask who's the best player that's ever played, and they're not even in the damn thing. And the reason's going to be because of some external thing that everyone wants to debate about whether they should be in or shouldn't be in. Who cares? It's not a choir. Just put the people in who are good at the sport. If you want to put an asterisk, put an asterisk. If you want to tell the whole story, tell the whole story. You know what's cool about the whole damn thing? Is the people that don't get in the damn thing get talked about more than everyone that gets in. Now, at this very moment, I'm worried whether or not my voice is going to make it 2 hours, but that's here nor there.
You sound great.
Dude, it sounds unbelievably bad, but that's here.
Basketball game yesterday? Where'd you lose the voice?
No. I think, not to sound like a bad person, but yesterday it started. Today I've got into myself into a position where I think I'm calling it the Bohemian. I don't even know if that's the right word to use there. I might sound like an idiot, but the Bohemian COVID. I don't know if I have COVID. I don't think I do. I'm not going to go get tested. I don't want to make it sound like I don't care about it. It's just that I feel great. My voice, though, I don't know. Maybe I should get it looked into. Speaking of legacies, though, championship weekend is this weekend, as we all know. And I want to talk about one quarterback that if they win this weekend, they should be talked about and put in the upper echelon group that is quarterback. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. We have mailbag from some student, I'm sure, randomly throughout the city. We have buy or sell. But before we continue, the last time I was on this show, how could I forget? I was ridiculed and called names in the chat because we did not talk about college basketball. Now, just off the heels of a great moral victory on Tuesday night with the Cincinnati Bearcats going into Fog Allen Fieldhouse and only losing by 5, they got outdone last night by the Xavier Musketeers. Now, you might think that this was a big-time win, but by big-time win, usually with Xavier, it's really a loss. And by big-time win, I mean Xavier falls to Creighton 85-78. That sets their record to 10-9. They will play number 1 UConn this Sunday, what sets up to be probably another big-time victory. Now, you know, you might say 85-79 or whatever the score ended up being, excuse me. It was a lot closer than that. I watched the game. It really genuinely was closer than the score indicated. Now, UK played yesterday. I remember people getting on me about UK, telling me about how great they were. And you know what? I think they probably are pretty good. They played last night, too. They played the powerhouse that is South Carolina. You know, you don't go into South Carolina. What do they say about South Carolina? Reed?
Where is South Carolina located in, or where is it in Columbia, South Carolina?
Columbia, yeah.
You don't go into Columbia
Right.
and expect to walk out with a victory.
Especially not on a Tuesday night with 5,000 fans in the stands. But the 6th-ranked Cats, they fell 79-62 to South Carolina. This is why, for me, I've had a hard time lately, and by lately the last few years, getting into college basketball before football's over, because all too often, a lot of decent teams get into the tournament. They expanded the tournament. There's the first 4 now, which I'm not totally against. But we do this every year during tournament time. There's this age-old debate of whether or not some teams should get in or whether some teams shouldn't get in. And let's be honest, if you're on the cut line of getting into the NCAA tournament, you've had an okay year at best. You're not a very good basketball team. Now, if you want to discuss injuries and say, listen, we had a couple guys injured, that's why our record isn't what it is, they're a completely different team now, I could buy the sentiment. And there have been some, last 4 in, if you want to call it that, teams that have made runs.
Mixed.
But does that actually kind of prove the theory that is the regular season of college basketball is somewhat irrelevant in the first place? Yeah, you have to get in, of course. You can't lose your games in the regular season and then find yourself with the ability to have success in the postseason. But it seems like we've gotten ourselves in a position with college basketball that the only thing anyone ever cares about is what you did in March, what you do for the tournament. Mick Cronin's a perfect example of that. Speaking of legacies, if Mick Cronin did not have that run in the NCAA tournament just a short few years ago with UCLA, we would probably be discussing, or his legacy would be, that he was somewhat of a fraud when it came to having a team that could play deep into a tournament.
It absolutely would.
One single run.
Right.
It absolutely would.
Right.
Which is, I don't know where you guys want to go this week. Lady and gentleman now. Can't just say a bunch of guys. So welcome, Lindsay. I want to discuss one quarterback that I think
we're
has
thinking
been
about the same quarterback.
that I think has been slept on. I think he's a guy that I overlooked, and that's Jared Goff. Now you might say to me, "Oh man, Jared Goff is whatever. He's overrated." This and that. He went to a place that everyone goes to die. He was in a Super Bowl. Now, I know that everyone's going to call me a hater and do all these things. And Joe Burrow and Jared Goff's resume are not that far apart. Now, I'm not suggesting that Joe Burrow won't have a better career than Jared Goff or anything like that. But I think that it just shows, what I'm trying to illustrate, is how big of a gap we put those guys in. But when you look at the numbers and you look at what they've accomplished, you could argue that if he wins this weekend, he's done very similar things to a Joe Burrow. And I'm not trying to pull Joe Burrow down. I'm trying to lift Jared Goff up to that same category of people. This guy went to the Lions. Who, could we all agree that they're worse than the Bengals franchise? Yes or no?
We will happily agree with you, yes. I mean, yeah, there's like 4 franchises that are worse than the Bengals, and the Lions are absolutely one of them.
I'd argue that the Lions are the worst organization in sports history.
Right.
So he goes to that place. And to be fair, it's not just him, of course. But he goes to that place, and he finds himself in a position where it's not likely. I think that they get steamrolled by the 49ers. But crazier things have obviously happened. If you would have told me that the Packers were going to beat the Cowboys, not only would I have laughed, if you'd have told me that the Packers were kneeing out the game with their backup quarterback in, I would have put as much money as I possibly had on whatever you were selling. So clearly things can happen. But if he were to win this game, I think that he has to be included as one of the top quarterbacks. You don't need to put him with Mahomes, who at this point, I'm like Casey. I think me and Casey are on the same wavelength with Patrick Mahomes. I did think that there was some semblance, this is going to sound terrible to say, but I'm going to say it anyways, coattail riding with Patrick Mahomes for a little bit of while. It's like I couldn't buy the fact that, oh my God, look how great this guy is when he has Tyreek Hill, who's turned out to be clearly one of the best wide receivers, not just of the recent years, but maybe, and again, I'm not trying to get too crazy here, but all time, in a short window of time, there's not many guys you take over Tyreek Hill, in my opinion. And he has the greatest tight end of all time in Travis Kelce. And, oh, by the way, he's got Andy Reid, and he's got a great offensive line, and he plays with a pretty damn good defense. I don't know. That recipe seems like one in which you should win a lot of games. But this year, and even I would say last year, Mahomes has put himself into a category of his own. Mahomes this year has done more, in my opinion, this specific year than he's ever done in his career. Because he plays on what I would consider a relatively average, maybe a little bit above average football team. And if he finds himself in the Super Bowl again, not only will I not want to watch the Super Bowl because I'm tired of it, but it does make you wonder if the NFL's scripted. Anyways, that's a joke, okay? That's a joke. But behind every joke's a little bit of the truth. That's a kid tip. But am I stretching it too far with Jared Goff? Am I giving him too much credit?
Listen, here's the thing about Jared Goff is that all of the extenuating circumstances that have been around his career to this point have led you into the opinion that most of the country has that Jared Goff is a good quarterback. He can win you games, it's clearly, but there's some limitations there. And the reason that is because we saw the Rams move off of him, right? Sean McVay didn't want him anymore. We got to upgrade at quarterback. And what happened to the Rams after they did that? They won a Super Bowl. So then you're like, all right, well, this Jared Goff guy. But, yeah, absolutely. If he goes to a team in the Detroit Lions and wins an NFC championship, then is Jared Goff a top 5 quarterback? No. But he certainly deserves more respect than he has gotten to this point. Now, am I going to compare him to we have here in our hometown? Not quite. But, yeah, I mean, he's a first overall pick for a reason. He's now been to 2 NFC championship games with 2 different teams. The list of quarterbacks that have been to NFC championships or conference championships with multiple teams is very thin. It's very thin. You can count them on your hands. So if he goes to a Super Bowl with 2 different teams, that list is even more thin. I think there's only 3 or 4 quarterbacks that have done that before. So, yeah, Jared Goff has a chance to cement his legacy. And I want to, if you're going to tease opinions or if you're going to tease things later in the show, I think that the Lions have a pretty good shot this weekend. I think they have a really good shot this weekend.
What makes you think that? Because I think the opposite.
The reason that I think that the Lions have a pretty good shot this weekend is because the only reason that we don't look at the Lions as much in the way that we view the 49ers at this point is 2 reasons. 1, what the teams looked like last year, and 2, what the teams have looked like throughout the history of their franchise, right? 49ers, ballyhooed, one of the best organizations in the NFL, right? Lions, bottom of the barrel. We already established that. Out of the 4 teams currently playing in the conference championship weekend, who has played the worst over the last month or so? It's pretty clearly the 49ers. In fact, the last 2 meaningful games that they have played, which was against the Ravens when they got blown out on Christmas, and then just last week against the Packers, the last 2 meaningful games they played, they got outplayed. Fully outplayed. Bullied at the line, kind of outplayed. It took a couple missed field goal and miracle runs by Christian McCaffrey for them to beat the Packers. So I just think that the 49ers, we maybe overvaluing them a little bit, and I think that Jared Goff's a better quarterback than certainly Brock Purdy.
I think we are overvaluing the 49ers, but for that reason, this is where my dumb brain gets a hold of something like this. In no world do I think this current 49ers team should be 7.5-point favorites over the Lions. And despite what I think of the Lions, what they've done in their past, the current Lions are a damn good football team. Their defensive line has been elite. They've got 2 of the best, maybe 2 top 5 running backs this year in the NFL. They've got 2 of them. The receiving core has been great. Sam Laporta is a warrior battling with a knee brace that's like a whole foot around the knee on each side. But I do think, going back to what Trace was saying about Jared Goff, I think there's a testament to starting like brand new. When he came to I think his first year was at the St. Louis Rams, right? And then they switched. I'm almost certain. Maybe not. Maybe
Los Angeles Rams.
It was Los Angeles. Well, either way, they were terrible. The Los Angeles Rams were terrible when he took over the helm at starting quarterback. And again, when you come back into Detroit, assuming that's like a career-ending move, right? That's what at least everybody else thought. Mm-hmm. It's where quarterbacks are sent to die. And he's come out here, and maybe with the help of Dan Campbell, shout out to him, biting kneecaps off and what have you. But they've revived now the Lions. That's now 2 franchises that Jared Goff has been a part of reviving, and maybe potentially getting the Lions to a Super Bowl. This would be the second time he's done that, and it would cement a legacy, to Trace's point, that I think should be recognized as one of the greats. Maybe, obviously, he's not a top 25 quarterback of all time, but he's a quarterback that should be mentioned with, I don't know, guys like, I'm trying to think. I think he's certainly been better than Andy Dalton. If you look at Andy Dalton's entire career, I would take Jared Goff if he gets to another Super Bowl. So I agree. I think Jared Goff should be respected more.
That was a brave take. Jared Goff is better than Andy Dalton.
Well, I think it is.
That's a brave take.
There's a difference between talent and success, right? Obviously, Jared Goff has had way more success than the likes of Andy Dalton. You could even compare it to Joe Burrow and his success. They're very similar quarterbacks in that regard. But in terms of actual talent, what's actually there on the field, I mean, he gets a lot of help. I mean, he's got a top 5 offensive line. He's got a top 3 receiver, a top 5 tight end, a duo running back that's really phenomenal this year. And then that defense, it's not a top 10 defense, but Aiden Hutchinson is the real deal. I mean, the last 4 or 5 games, he's had like 8 or 10 sacks. So, yeah, I like the Lions a lot. I think you might be giving Jared Goff the exact credit he deserves, but I don't think he's I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback. I think he's right there. If you have him, you can win. If you have anything less than him, you're probably not going to win a Super Bowl.
As a trade in the history of the NFL or even sports matter, worked out for both teams better than the Matt Stafford, Jared Goff trade. Like the Rams got a Super Bowl, which was what they're trying to do, right? We're going to elevate our quarterback position to see if we can win the big one. They won the big one. The Lions said, all right, we'll take all your draft picks and we'll have a stopgap quarterback over the time to get us across this bridge. And they used those picks and they hit on almost all of them. And now they have, I think this Lions team this isn't a flash in the pans Lions team. This is a really good roster.
I think the Lions are good, yes, but the only thing I would push back on a little bit with the whole notion that Jared Goff has just kind of fallen into a great situation is that it seems as if some quarterbacks get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to their team having success, and some teams are winning because their team is good. Like, that's the same position that Brock Purdy finds himself in, and I'm not suggesting that Brock Purdy is even what I would call a great quarterback. But you have to give credit at some point to the person that's still leading that offense. Jared Goff, by all stretch of the imagination, is not he's not anywhere near Patrick Mahomes. Put it this way, the 3 remaining quarterbacks outside of him that are playing this weekend, he clearly is much farther down than the 2 that are playing in the AFC.
Yeah, I think he's better than Brock, but yeah.
But I would say that it depends on how you want to look at the Brock situation because Brock is still really young. Like, that's where this whole legacy thing sometimes can turn on a dime. Because if Mahomes loses that game last week, and he didn't, and he played great, so maybe you could say, well, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a jolly good time, so what's the point in discussing it anyways? But if he were to lose that game last week, the narrative, whether it's fair or unfair, would have been, oh, look at Patrick Mahomes. He can't win when he has to go on the road in the playoffs. Now the narrative is, what can he do? He can do it all. And the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. The question left is, who has the best chance of winning the Super Bowl? And I just don't think the Lions have a puncher's chance. I really don't. It comes down to the simple fact that the Lions defensively are so deficient that I don't think that they can come to expect. They're going to have to score 24 points against the Niners to win for sure. And I'm just saying, at some point, this Niners team is a great roster, a great team. Mm-hmm. And I think at some point they wake up, if that makes sense. You ever seen teams that are kind of sleepwalking and then they have a close call and then from there they're just world beaters? And the Packers had a chance. The Packers, in my opinion, I could be wrong on this, they played the 49ers at their worst. I don't know if the 49ers could have played a worse game than they did. I don't know if Brock Purdy can play much worse. Now, you could point to the 5-interception game against the Ravens.
Against the Ravens, yeah.
But if you go back and watch that game, I'm not calling all 5 of them bad luck. But there was some bad luck interceptions.
Thank you.
Some bad luck interceptions. Some interceptions you're not getting again. You know, if you think the ball is going to just randomly, magically tip off a guy's hand and then ricochet 10 yards to the right and magically go right into the defensive back hands, be my guest. But when San Fran absolutely annihilates the Lions, the one thing I want everyone to know before it happens is that Jared Goff should earn some respect. And by God, if he finds a way to win, I'm putting his ass right at the top. When I say that, it goes Mahomes, everybody else that you would consider to be in that next tier, and Jared Goff needs and should be in that group.
So you'd put so you have Mahomes here, and then when you get to the next group of the Josh Allens, Lamar Jacksons,
correct,
the Joe Burrows, am I missing any big ones?
If we're gonna put Patrick Mahomes on a pedestal in which, if you look at his numbers and you look at what his team's done, and those are the 2 metrics that we're going to use, and you take out of course we're going to use the eye test to a certain extent because we're humans, but if that's the metrics we're going to use, you tell me why Jared Goff shouldn't be in that group.
I guess it is based off of what I see him when I watch him play. It's the same reason that I don't like Brock Purdy a whole lot. It's like when I watch him play, there's clearly limitations there. When I watch Josh Allen play, when I watch Lamar Jackson play, when I watch a guy even like Matt Stafford or Joe Burrow play, I am in awe at times. Jared Goff and Brock Purdy don't have that wow to me, and very rarely do. Now Jared Goff has made some great throws this postseason. I'm still amazed that they decided to drop back on 2nd and 9 with the ball and a chance. They could just keep handing the ball off and ice some clock against the Rams. And they said, you know what, we're going to go for the win. We're gonna slit their throat. We're going to throw it 10 yards downfield with Jared Goff in this Rams defense. And they did that. He threw a beautiful ball to get the first down. He's made some huge throws. But yeah, like when I watch Jared Goff, I agree with everything you're saying that we have slept on him as a quarterback. But still, when I watch him play, he doesn't wow me like the other guys that I just noticed. I think there's a better legacy that can be cemented over on the other side of the league with Lamar Jackson.
So you think if Lamar Jackson were to slay the beast that is Patrick Mahomes and go on to win a Super Bowl, you think that would elevate his status more than it would Jared Goff if he were to win a Super Bowl?
If Lamar Jackson wins the Super Bowl, and you guys know my opinions on Patrick Mahomes, that I think he's I already think he's cemented himself as one of the greatest all time. You can call me crazy for that, but I think he certainly has gotten in that realm based off what he's done in his first 6 years. If Lamar Jackson wins the Super Bowl this year, how can we look at him and not say that is the best quarterback currently playing the sport? Because I haven't seen a quarterback evolve like Lamar Jackson has.
Agreed.
When he came in, he's running all over the field, right? He's taking big hits, and you're like, Lamar. And what was the old joke, the cliche joke that everyone said? Oh, you got a wide receiver playing quarterback. Lamar Jackson can spin it. Lamar Jackson can make huge throws. That's been the evolution of the Baltimore Ravens. Isn't all this team, this roster keeps getting bigger, the better and everything like that. Lamar Jackson keeps making more explosive plays. The evolution of the Baltimore Ravens is what Lamar Jackson's been able to do in the pocket. And if Lamar Jackson beats this Kansas City Chiefs defense, who I think is the second best defense currently. I think the best two teams still around are both in the AFC side. I think that the Chiefs have a better defense than either team on the NFC side. If they go in and they beat the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and they go beat a 49ers team or a very good Lions team, and I think a perennial contender in the Detroit Lions, then yeah, I think that you can't look at Lamar Jackson and say that he's not the best quarterback playing at this very moment.
Is it crazy to think that, and maybe this is all speculative, to where it really was maybe played out into the media more than it was in real life and what the actual situation was, but is it crazy to think that the Atlanta Falcons could have had Lamar Jackson? I mean, they could have just paid for him. Baltimore was basically saying in the middle of the offseason that, you know what, we're just not going to pay this guy because we don't think he's worth what he's asking for, and we're ready to move on if we need to. And now all of a sudden, randomly, after you pay the guy, you find yourself with maybe the best quarterback in the league completely, and they're not the Super Bowl favorite, but they're damn close. They're the favorite to win the AFC. If he went to the Falcons, this is where circumstance maybe matters more. Is it more circumstance or is it the player? If Lamar Jackson were to go to the Falcons, is everybody calling Lamar Jackson a fraud, or do you think he digs the Falcons out of a hole? You know what I'm saying?
I think he's great.
I think Lamar actually would make that Falcons team a playoff team, maybe even right where the Lions are right now, facing the 49ers in the championship round. The Falcons got an underrated defense. They've got a great defense. If they just stay healthy, they're going to be great. And they've got weapons galore. They probably wouldn't have Bijan anymore because they would have had to trade that first round, I believe. Yeah. But they still had Tyler Algier, Cordell Patterson at running backs, and they were built for Lamar. That being said, I do think that getting back to the initial question, Lamar Jackson's legacy. If he does win, I do think he is the best quarterback playing right now. And it's just not even right. It's just not even close because he provides a service to that team that cannot be understated. I mean, anytime he drops back to pass, he's got a potential to run it for a first down every single time. Mm-hmm. He takes away a defender every single time you snap the ball because you have to play a guy at that quarterback spy, whether that's the linebacker, the defensive end, or defensive tackle. That means there's less pass rushers. That means that there's a guy that might not be committing fully to the run game as well. They might not be stepping up. They are so efficient right now. And the fact that Lamar can throw the deep throws now, the reason like the Bengals won a couple years ago, that 40-something, the 20 game, was because Lamar couldn't throw deep. Hollywood Brown was open a few times in that game and just overshot him. Nowadays, he's hitting those throws. He's making all the throws, and it's just so hard to stop. Hard.
Yeah, to belabor the point that I've already made, to hit on the point that you made, I really haven't seen a quarterback evolve like Lamar Jackson in my young NFL watching days. And that's the point that I'm trying to hit here is that his evolution is why I think that he could, if he wins, he is the best quarterback currently playing. Because he is such a great passer. Oh, yeah, and he's one of the most prolific runners we've ever seen play the quarterback position. He's faster. He is faster than most secondaries in the league. There are few people on this planet that are faster than Lamar Jackson. And he's one of the top passers in the league. He really is an unbelievable talent.
I think Lamar got a bad rap when he first came out in the first place in regards to his throwing ability. Lamar could always spin the ball. Whether he was accurate enough, that's to be determined. But at the same time, what you gain in his scramble ability and his athleticism, it far outweighs the minuscule ability of what he had when he first came in the league to throw the ball. The only thing I would say about Lamar is the shining example of what the Bears hoped they could get, or what they had hoped they were going to get out of Justin Fields. Like, as much as I make fun of Justin Fields, as much as I kind of push back on the fact that Justin Fields could be a franchise quarterback, Lamar Jackson does a couple things. Justin Fields has the athleticism to be Lamar Jackson. The difference is that I think Lamar Jackson in and of himself is a better thrower of the football. And on top of that, I think Lamar doesn't get enough credit for having an idea of what he wants to do, right? Like there is something to be said about knowing an offense and having the ability to check out of something, and then on top of that, understanding if X happens, I need to do Y, and I think Lamar does that at a pretty damn high level. And you have to do that in this league in order to be successful. So I don't know if I'm going to put Lamar as the best quarterback in the league if he wins, because more often than not, I feel like quarterbacks get more credit than they deserve when they win, and they get too much blame when they lose.
That's probably fair.
I think Josh Allen falls into that boat right now. Does anybody look lesser of Josh Allen because he didn't beat the Chiefs the other night?
No.
Now, he made 2 bad decisions, in my opinion, and they just so happened to come on the final drive. Should he have tried to hit a 35-yard in route over the middle of the field for a touchdown with 2 minutes left when he has a guy underneath in Diggs? And to be honest with you, if Diggs was worth as much as he thought he was, he would have caught the most unbelievable pass I've ever seen thrown on TV. Josh Allen let go of that football, and it looked like it just left the screen, and it was off the screen for 30 yards. And then it just magically comes down. And I don't know if you've seen the clip, but Diggs whiffs, goes right through his arms.
Tries to catch it with
Did
his
you
body.
see what Diggs did after that?
No, I didn't see it.
Did
I didn't
anybody
his
see
reaction.
it?
I
Did
didn't
you
his
see
reaction.
it? I seen it. He literally looks back at Josh Allen, and he goes like this. Like we were close, bro. Just a little bit more or something. Like, what? Like,
I mean, he's
you
trying to
couldn't have
trap
thrown a ball better.
He's trying to trap it with his body. Just catch it with your hands, man. Just catch it with your hands.
We talked about this on Monday, but that was what I was fearful of when Josh Allen lost to Patrick Mahomes again, because already before this year, people were talking about the Bills. This Bills teams, they're so fraudulent, right? This is such a fraudy team, despite the fact that only one team has won more games over the past 4 years. That's the Kansas City Chiefs. Only, I believe, one team has won more playoff games over the past 4 years. That's the Kansas City Chiefs. It's not, like the Bills are just in the wrong conference at the wrong time, right? Like it's people get mad when you throw the Peyton Manning, Tom Brady comparison to the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes thing when the similarities are right in front of you. The Indianapolis Colts were unstoppable in the regular season at the beginning of that rivalry. They just kept running into the New England Patriots and losing. And everyone was like, back then, this Colts team can't win in the postseason. They can't get it done. Eventually, Josh Allen will get over that hump. I truly believe that. Like, I didn't want the talk after that game Sunday night to be, this Bills team can't get it done. I mean, I remember when they were 7-6 earlier this year, everyone was going, this team's not going to make the postseason. What'd they do? They rattled off and played great football for the rest of the year. Won a playoff game at home and took the Chiefs down to the wire. That's a funny point that you made about Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields, though, not to completely derail this conversation about legacies and everything like that. But I am in the camp that the Bears should absolutely move off of Justin Fields. A lot of Bears fans want to keep Justin Fields. The reason I don't think the Bears should keep Justin Fields in the allegory that is Justin Fields to Lamar Jackson, I haven't seen the improvement from Justin Fields that I saw in Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson was a unanimous MVP his second year. Was already that explosive a player. Justin Fields has been kind of the same player. The flashes of greatness are there. You see the Lamar Jackson in him sometimes, but you don't see it consistent enough. I haven't seen the improvement. I haven't seen the consistency in Justin Fields that I've seen in Lamar Jackson through his first 4 years. That's why I think they should move off, is because I haven't seen him get better.
He's improved in completion percentage every year. It's. I mean, you can say by how many. It's not a ton, but he's improving.
60% to 61%.
And correct, but let's
turning the ball over.
But let's not pretend he's at, and I think this goes back to another one of Trace's points where if Lamar goes to the Falcons, what are the Falcons? The Bears are one of the most inept organizations in all of sports, and I think that does play a part in it. I don't know how long Eberflus is going to last in Chicago, but I would imagine it's not going to be very long. So you're going to go through a couple head coaches, a couple of schemes. I wouldn't give up on Justin Fields yet. He got hurt this year, which sucks. But if he didn't get hurt, I would say he would have had a decent season. Not a great season, not a good season, but a decent season. And I'd take that. I'd take a sure thing over Caleb Williams.
Here's the thing about the sure thing that is Justin Fields is how low of a bar Caleb Williams has to clear to be as good as Justin Fields was in his first 3 years? It's an incredibly low bar.
They're two completely different quarterbacks, in my opinion, right? Like they're.
I get it.
It's the age-old debate. This is maybe the best debate there is to have in regards to what it is that you would like to do when you go about trying to build your franchise. Do you build it within short windows, or do you think that you're going to try to replicate what everyone else in the world seems to try to replicate, which is this dynasty-type franchise? We want to be the Chiefs. We want to be the Patriots. We want to have a franchise quarterback, and we want to have sustained success over a 10-year stretch. Or do you want to try to be the Rams? Do you want to try to be the Panthers a few years ago with Cam Newton? Now, I get it. They didn't win the Super Bowl. But my point is that you could build, in my opinion, it sounds crazy to say, but I think Justin Fields, for 1 year, has it in him. With the right guys around him, you could convince me they could win a Super Bowl. But the problem is that he's going to require, in my opinion, a significant amount of help. And it's going to have to be a scheme that molds to what he's good at. Man. You can't just put Fields into a system like Joe Burrow's in and think he's going to be worth anything, because he's not. He needs to be put in a system to where he legitimately, and I know people are going to make fun of what I'm going to say, oh, Trace is a hater. He needs to be put in a system that is more geared towards running the football than it is throwing the football, because he's much closer to being a running back than he is of being a quarterback. Yeah. That's what Justin Fields genuinely is. Unbelievable athlete. Now, how we got to Justin Fields, I don't know, but that's where we're at. Go ahead, Casey.
The thing I would say, too, is like Lamar Jackson, we talked about his progression. It didn't start until Greg Roman got in the building and became the offensive coordinator, revamped that offense, and it became more run-oriented. And that sort of unlocked Lamar Jackson's MVP season. I'm looking at it right here. That's when he started being the offensive coordinator, was the year that Lamar was MVP. So the fact that the Bears went out and got this guy, I think, was a very smart move on the Bears' part. I think if there was a chance that the development for Justin Fields was because of coaching, we'll know that answer this upcoming season, because Greg Roman will put in an offense that benefits Justin Fields' strengths, that will help out this offense be more efficient, not being able to put the ball in harm's way. We'll see what happens to the receivers, like DJ Moore. He might disappear a little bit, because that's kind of what happened with the Ravens receivers. But, hey, the way that their defense was playing at the back half of their season, and the way that the Ravens played on offense those years, it's going to be a really good combination. Watch out for the Bears next year.
Everyone keeps saying in the chat, and I hear this every time Justin Fields gets brought up, is that he doesn't have an offensive line. He doesn't have an offensive line. I guess I've watched the Bears play. I'd argue that his offensive line is not horrible. It's not that bad. Now, again, maybe this is because Joe Burrow is Superman. But how in one hand could you tell me the guy that completes 60% completion rating has done nothing in his career so far that shows you any hope to being a franchise quarterback, or a quarterback that can take you and win you a Super Bowl because of him? But on the same hand, brag about how your guy can go to the Super Bowl and damn near win the Super Bowl, one play away from winning the Super Bowl with the world's worst offensive line. You can't have it both ways. You can't tell me that the reason that Joe Burrow is elite and unbelievable isn't because of the wide receivers and all the talent he has around him. It's because of what he's been able to do because the offensive line's so bad. But then on the other hand, tell me that the reason that Justin Fields is not even average, below average, not world's worst, but league's worst completion percentage, and then turn around and tell me it's all because their offensive line. The Bears have a decision to make. I don't know what decision they're going to make, but I think the Bears are closer The Bears are closer than everyone wants to say. I'll tell you that. Like, they are not a terrible football team. And it's not only because they're not terrible, because their quarterback is great. I'll tell you that. So the other thing to say, the last thing I'll say about this, is I don't know what to do for the Bears. I don't think it's a slam dunk either way. I don't know if Caleb Williams is the guy. I maybe I'm crazy for saying that, but this guy, every time he played decent competition in college, he didn't play well. He didn't play well.
Well, that's the point that I want to make is, like, I'm not saying that Caleb Williams is going to be the next great NFL quarterback. But the bar that Justin Fields has set is so incredibly low to clear for Caleb Williams that there isn't a decision that they need to make. It's a slant. Like, we're talking about a guy that has thrown for 6,000 yards and rushed for 2,000. He's thrown 40 touchdowns and have scored 14 on the ground in Justin Fields. He's thrown 30 interceptions. He's fumbled the ball 36 times. He's won 10 games in 3 years. Oh, and after this year, you got to pay him probably like $40 million a year over the guy, and you can just reset the clock on a young quarterback. Like, it's not that I don't think that Justin Fields can succeed in this league. I think he could go to the Falcons. I think he can go somewhere and be a playoff quarterback. I truly believe that. But when you're not seeing constant improvement from Justin Fields, just slight improvement, right? The numbers are getting just barely better. Not this explosive of improvement that we typically see in very good quarterbacks in their second and third year. It's been more of the same every single year. And now you're going to have to pay him $40 million over just going and draft the best prospect one of the best prospects that the league has seen in 10 years. He might be a bust, don't get me wrong. But the bar is so incredibly low for Caleb Williams in Chicago that the worst case scenario is that you get Justin Fields.
I don't think that's the worst case scenario.
I don't know. He's won 10 games and 40 starts.
I would say a lot of that's not his fault, and that's where we'll never agree on this topic. It's just I think that eventually organizational malpractice comes into the equation, and that's what the Bears have been over the past several years. It's been a disaster. It's been a dumpster fire, and I don't think a quarterback can. It depends on the quarterback, obviously, but I don't think a quarterback like Justin Fields is going to be able to succeed there. Now, that also means I don't think a quarterback like Caleb Williams will ever be able to succeed there either. I think just it's a never-ending circle of failure because of the Bears, not because of these quarterbacks.
Yeah, but that's the same thing that was said about the Lions for how long? In fact, It was this year, halfway through the year, everybody just kept saying, well, in case he was be the one that was always getting made fun of because he say something positive about the Lions and everyone just say, well, that's the Lions. The Browns, pretty much the same boat. At some point, if you have a decent quarterback, these franchises that are supposedly losers can become winners pretty clearly if you have a decent roster around you. I don't think that the reason that the Bears are losing is because their roster is terrible. I really don't. I don't think it's like the Browns. The Browns, you can convince me, and in fact, it was proven. They took a dad that was making cupcakes with his kids weeks, and then 2 weeks later, the Browns were winning football games left and right, and they went to the playoffs. Yeah, they got smashed in the postseason. But you can't convince me that that's what the Bears are. Who cares about the damn Bears at the end of the day anyways? The last thing I have about championship weekend here is that if somehow, some way, the Lions were to win, does it, and this is a dumb question maybe, but I genuinely think it will happen. Does it tarnish whoever wins the AFC and saying that they got fortunate to where they played the Lions of the Super Bowl? I actually think that will become a thing if it happens. Should it be? I think it will.
So let me I need you to map out this take. You think that if the Lions win the NFC,
I don't think it should happen. It's going to be said though.
It will tarnish whoever wins the AFC because they in turn will have an easier Super Bowl. No, it will ruin their Super Bowl run.
I'm saying it will discredit one of the quarterbacks in saying that They won a Super Bowl against the Lions.
Two things about that.
Jared Goff. It's not me saying that. I'm asking the question.
Well, it is you saying it a little bit.
No, I'm not. Genuinely, I'm not.
Okay, all right.
Two things about this.
I'll tell you why I'm not.
This
because
is a crazy take.
Can I say this? No matter what happens, if Patrick Mahomes beats the Ravens on the road just after he beat the Bills on the road, even if they lose the Super Bowl, I have respect for the Chiefs for the first time in a long time. I really do.
I think this is me maybe getting a little ahead of my skis here. I think whoever wins the AFC is going to win the Super Bowl, regardless of who they play.
Nah, that's a crazy take.
Because I think the AFC has shown, without a doubt, how much better it is than the NFC this year. Despite losing all the quarterbacks that the AFC had this year, they still dominated the NFC in interconference play. And I think that, in all honesty, if I'm an odds maker, which I'm not, the Ravens are going to be favored over the 49ers if those two teams win.
I don't think so. I think the 49ers are going to be favored the rest of the way.
I think that the Chiefs.
You are such a Chiefs freaking slappy.
I'm an AFC fan.
This dude's the biggest Chiefs slappy outside of Kansas City.
I said earlier.
If you take one step, and I mean one step, out of the proper Kansas City, you will not find a bigger fan of the Kansas City Chiefs than Reed Mouse.
Two things. One, earlier in this show, everyone calls me the Kansas City Chiefs and the Patrick Mahomes slappy. I'm sorry that I'm the only one that wants to give proper credit to a dynasty right before our eyes. Secondly, I said earlier on this show that if Lamar Jackson wins the Super Bowl, he's the best quarterback in the league, despite me also saying that I think Patrick Mahomes is one of the all-time greats already. So I don't know how you can say that I'm a Kansas City Chiefs slappy. Third question that I have for you guys is why don't the Kansas City Chiefs, with a top 3 defense in the league, get enough credit for their defense?
Because they have Patrick Mahomes. He gets all the damn credit. He gets all the credit. It doesn't matter what happens. Referees throw flags here, flags there. You know what? It was pass interference. But it does seem kind of weird, doesn't it? That there was no flags thrown, and then 5 seconds after the play, randomly, there's a flag thrown. Doesn't that seem a little bit weird? I'm not suggesting I'm a conspiracy theorist because I'm the farthest one from it. I'm not suggesting the games are rigged.
Sounds like you are.
But it does seem odd that he gets a 5th down against the Bengals. He gets a personal foul called when he flops out of the back of the damn thing to get a field goal. He does get every flag known to mankind. It does seem a little odd.
Yeah, as we all know, that if the NFL really wants to make some real money,
right,
they'll make the dynasty in Kansas City, Missouri, not New York, Dallas, LA.
No, they picked their guy in Patrick Mahomes.
Not the Chicago Bears. They'll make their dynasty. They'll rig it so that little old Kansas City, Missouri wins time after time. What a ridiculous.
Seems to be working.
What a ridiculous conspiracy this is. No, but the reason I say that is when the Philadelphia Eagles were dominating last year, all we talked about was how great this defense is. When the Cleveland Browns were going 11-5, having their best team in our lifetime, we talked about how great this defense is. When the Dallas Cowboys, look how good this defense is. But when we talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, all we talk about is, man, their offense can't score a whole lot in the red zone. Man, this offense, it looks limited. Nobody talks about how the Kansas City Chiefs have the second best defense in the playoffs right now behind the Baltimore Ravens. That's not opinion. That is statistical fact.
I think it is being talked about, but Trace is right. They have Patrick Mahomes. Let's not.
But all we do, we don't talk about how great Patrick Mahomes is. We talk about how bad Patrick Mahomes and the offense has looked. We're not
correct because Patrick Mahomes is the story. It's a quarterback-driven league. Everybody knows this. The defense has been a story. It's just being overshadowed by the greatest player that's ever been, was, or is in Patrick Mahomes. I think that's not an opinion. That's what happens, right? And again, this is no knock on the Chiefs' defense. They've been great all year. But when you think of the Kansas City Chiefs, you're not going to think of Chris Jones in the defense. That's not who you think of. Mm-hmm. When you buy jerseys for the Kansas City Chiefs, the number 1 jersey on the team is not on the defense. The number 2 jersey on the team is not on the defense. The number 3 jersey on the team is not on the defense. It's an offense-driven league. When you play Madden at home, you're playing offense and you're skipping the defense and you're just getting back on offense. That's the way football is. It's the way it works. We all love defense. We all love good defense. We respect it. But at the end of the day, you're trying to market a product, and nobody's better than that than the NFL. Maybe the NBA. You can make an argument. But at the end of the day, you are marketing a quarterback, and that's why he does get calls. Patrick Mahomes absolutely gets calls. Burrow does not get any calls, I would say. That's fair. When it comes to, I think there's a stat on it, right? When it comes to asking for a late hit on something like that, like when you're going out for a slide and they hit you late. I think Allen and Mahomes get a ton of those calls. Burrow doesn't get a lot of them. They're trying to market stars, and that's what the NFL is. Despite it's a great sports league, but there's a reason that it is listed as an entertainment business, not a sports business. If they wanted to rig it, they could rig it because it's an entertainment business. Now, they would never do that because nobody would ever watch it again, but that's the point. So why don't we talk about the Chiefs' defense? It's because the story of all these NFL teams is the offense always, and it always will be.
It's definitely not rigged. The thing that happens, though, is that there are humans involved in this, and they are biased subliminally. 100%.
Yep.
And you can say whatever you want about Patrick Mahomes or Jared Goff, but if those two guys are playing in the Super Bowl, the NFL referee, whether you want him to be or not, he is going to be more protective over Patrick Mahomes. He just is. And I'm not saying that that's the difference whether you win or you lose more times than not, but let's face it. If Justin Fields, who we've talked about, you want me to say something nice about him? The guy doesn't get that many calls. Why? Because he's uber athletic and he's able to take the hit. If Justin Fields is playing in the AFC Championship game and he takes off like Mahomes did on a broken leg, which I got to give Mahomes some credit here. Mahomes was unbelievably hurt to the point where he couldn't even walk off the field. Yet 2 weeks later, he was sprinting about as fast as I've ever seen him sprint to get a first down in the AFC Championship game. And he flopped, rightfully so. Don't blame him a bit. He's there to try to get calls. Justin Fields is not getting that late hit call. Patrick Mahomes is. That's the difference. And I'm not saying it's rigged, but
right.
That's the truth. And whether or not you want to agree with that or not disagree with it, that's fine. That can be your opinion. But Patrick Mahomes is always going to get the benefit of the doubt more times than not, because the other thing that he does do well, he does the same way that Coach K or the same way that maybe Bobby Knight or the same way that any other great college basketball coach has done. They work the referees. Patrick Mahomes complains a lot. He complains a lot. Now, you might want to say that that's whining, and it certainly gets on my nerves from time to time. I get tired of seeing him complain. But it works because ultimately those referees are human. And if they hear someone complain long enough, they're going to be more aware of it. And if there's a close play again, and you've already complained about it enough during the game, you're going to get the call. Just one time I'd like to see Patrick Mahomes not get the call and see what happens. But we have seen that happen already this year, and we see what happened. He was in the press conference complaining about it.
I think that I was going to say, I just wanted to add on to it. And again, we were talking about the NFL being rigged or what have you. It's not rigged, but I do think if there was ever...
Silly to think it is.
It is silly to think it is. If there was ever a time to look at officiating, it would be this offseason, because I do think there is a serious problem. I think NFL refs have been worse than they've ever been this season.
In what regards?
In regards to being inconsistent with calling penalties.
Which penalties?
It would be specifically pass interference. It would be specifically the lining up offside stuff. They've made it clear that it's not great.
Yeah, there's not a better organization in professional sports than the NFL at frequently implementing change.
I do agree with that.
If there's any league that will go out saying the NFL needs to look at their officiating, right, is about as big of a blanket statement as saying your team needs to have better play calling, right? Like in some aspects it's true, But, like, what does that mean? What do you mean they need to look at it? Because there's no league that does it better than the NFL at constantly changing rules, at constantly implementing things to make the sport better. Sometimes they do it wrong, right? Like the year that they had the PI could be reviewed. They were
that
dead
got
wrong, and they changed
sabotaged.
it.
That got sabotaged, in my opinion.
I think very early on they realized, this might have been the bad call, so let's abort. And they did. Right? That's what the NFL is better than any professional sport at, and that is constant change.
It seemed like they hid behind, like they usually will do. If the referees or the union that is what seems to be the referees don't like something, then they'll just sabotage it. The PI thing was perfectly fine. If it's close, sure, let's let it stand. But if it's egregious, and if you ask 100 people or you poll 100 people whether something's pass interference or not, and 90 out of 100 of them are saying it's pass interference, overturn the call. But they didn't do that, did they? They just kept the status quo all year long, let it, and they never overturned anything. So they were like, well, this didn't work. It didn't work because you never gave it a chance to work. But the one thing they need to do, if anything, they do change a lot, Reed. You got to give the NFL credit for that. And
Right.
the expedited replay is one of the best things that a league has done in a long time. You don't need to go underneath the little tablet,
Right.
the hood, and look at every single play. You don't need to do that. When you have guys in the sky that can see it, phone down or page down, whatever term you want to use, you get the call right in 5 seconds, and they do that a lot. They do that on spots sometimes, but they got to figure out the spots. I don't know what needs to be done specifically, but we are in a day and age where you can't convince me that the best way to figure out a spot is, and I'm not trying to be mean, but old men with striped pants on,
Right.
down the line, running straight down the field, using their eyes. And I'm going to give these guys credit. They get the spot right more times than not. They do a remarkably good job at getting the spot right. But when it means the game is on the line and you're trying to get a spot right, we have to have some technology that's better than what we have now. And definitely the chain system has to be better. How in the world are we still using chains? And that's where the NFL loses me from time to time, because it's like, what?
No, that's where you lose me.
That is where you lose me.
That's your quote.
That's where you lose me. Because this is a billion-dollar industry. And it seems like sometimes they hold on to things because they know they can. They just rub it in the faces of everyone else. Oh, we all agree. Yeah, it's pretty dumb. Hell, the game got delayed a few weeks ago because the chains broke. They were trying to put the chain back together. And it's like, how is this a thing? We got laser levels around our world that allow us to build skyscrapers. And we're using chains in a billion-dollar industry. Is that ever going to change?
I don't know if they'll ever replace or if they'll ever change the chains, but it is absolutely funny that they had to fix the chains, that they didn't just have a spare on the sideline. Hey, just grab the other set real
only
quick.
bring one.
Right, let's stop the game. Let's fix this. Like, I mean, come on, man. Like, how do we not have a spare? You want to talk about spots? In I mean, how bad was that spot in the Packers game?
It was a big call.
That was huge. And they were wrong. They were just dead wrong. But that happens sometimes. Trace, let's do this. Let's go to an ad break here at the 11
Love
hour.
that. We need to get our ads in as well.
Let's get
Got
our
to pay our bills around here.
Let's do our sponsors, and when we come back, we'll keep the conference championship talk because we have a buy or sell segment that we can get into. And then in the second half of the second hour, we can maybe talk about baseball or whatever, Xavier, whatever else we have. But
Do you think Joe Mauer is a Hall of Famer?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I think he's a Hall of Famer. Is he a first ballot Hall of Famer?
Well,
I don't know.
Well, the answer is yes.
Well, the answer is yeah. I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Well, he is, yes. Yeah. I guess. Is he in my mind? I don't know. But as I said at the top of the show, I genuinely, this is where maybe I shouldn't do a sports talk show. I just don't care. I just don't care. And you know what? I think that should be refreshing for people to see. You know what? I don't have to come in here and put on some fake shtick about whether I care about Joe Mauer being a first ballot Hall of Famer, whether he's in the Hall of Fame or not. But as I said before, if you got a system that, as I've said before, doesn't have the best baseball player of all time in it, then what are we doing? I would scream right now to go to a segment break, like maybe Tom would do, but I can't scream at all. So instead, I'm going to softly say, Casey, will you do us a favor and help us pay the bills around here and run some ads?
Yeah, I can do that. The Bengals report, Bearcat report, is brought to you by Encore Technologies. Encore Technologies provides IT solutions for a data-centered world with a suite of services from mobile computing to desktop to data center, supporting both centralized and work-from-home computing modules to improve efficiency and productivity.
What was that?
I thought it was
Guys,
like
it's productivity. That's what we say at the end
I
of
thought it was like that David Bowie song that was in Shrek. Changes. You know what I'm talking about?
Trying to change this. Is that David Bowie?
It was the original version, not in the movie. Yeah, productivity though.
Path to innovation begins here. Visit Encore.tech. Pahhni water. This lovely bottle of water right here. Made right here in Hamilton, Ohio. Uses natural limestone filtration, unlike the artificial processing that other brands use. The result is a healthy alkaline water, and some say the best tasting water in the world. Visit Encore.tech. Path to innovation begins here. Visit Pahhni Water at PAHHNI water.com. See where you can buy this great tasting water and drink lots of coffee from UDF.
That was good.
And also,
Also,
if you like the stream, please don't forget to leave a like. Also,
Thumbs up.
subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to keep seeing more of our content. And if you want to become a member, we have a link down below for you to become a member. And we have exclusive streams for our members. Box lunch, the gaming streams we do with you guys, other content in the future coming up. And also be on the lookout for Chatterbox Bets. We do a betting little segment thing on what used to be Not Too Picky. It is now converted into Chatterbox Bets. We're currently 5-1, so we're doing good.
who was
on
the
first
idiot
2
who
days.
lost?
I don't know. He's 1-1, Mr. 1-1.
Mr. 1-1. I am. Hey, who cares? It's Wednesday.
It is Wednesday. Oh, did you say Wednesday?
Is it Wednesday?
Are you saying? Is this a gambling thing? Like it's Wednesday?
No,
Like
it's
WINS?
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Today is the day, the third day of the work week, Wednesday.
Wednesday. Okay, I thought you were saying it was. I thought you were doing a gambling thing where it was Wednesday.
Well, it
That's
is
what
Wednesday.
we can do. That's what we can do for the Chatterbox Bets. I'm gonna say it's Wednesday.
Nice, clever, very clever.
Nobody's ever thought of that before. I promise you.
All right, Trace.
By the way, real quick, shout out to the one person who voted for Brandon Phillips. I think
That's awesome.
I think that's a really good high IQ vote, and I'm glad they used it. I'm
ha-
glad they used it. He deserves to be in the Hall. That dude, BP, he's one of the greatest second basemen of all time. Unfortunately, he will be removed from the ballot because he only got that one vote. But whoever that one person is, I want their name, and I want that person in the Hall of Fame because they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. That's a person who definitely used all 10 of their votes, or 12 of their votes, whatever it is.
10.
He used all 10 of his votes, and he was down to his last one. He's like, sure, let's vote for the most obscure, and he put Brandon Phillips' name in. I love it.
It was probably a Reds writer. In all seriousness, I don't know if all the Reds writers that are on the ballot.
It's just who? C. Trent, and who else?
There's 420 something writers, so I don't know how many are from Cincinnati. But I'm going to be honest. Everyone gets mad when people like Brandon Phillips gets votes. I think it's kind of fun. Like clearly he's not a Hall of Famer, but if I had 9 votes and I didn't actually think that a 10th person, I would just be like, sure, I'll honor you. You're a hometown, like Jock Jones. Remember Jock Jones?
Yeah.
He got 2 votes a couple years ago in the Hall of Fame voting, which was fun. Hall of Fame voting is something that I deeply love. And what's funny is yesterday everyone's talking about the Joe Mauer debate that I had with Tom. I got home yesterday and I had a moment of reflection thinking about my favorite sports topic is the Hall of Fame, Baseball Hall of Fame. And I got to sit down and argue with Marty Brenneman and Tom Brenneman about my favorite catcher, his Hall of Fame worthiness. That was a pretty,
And you were right.
That was a pretty cool moment. I mean, I don't know.
You were right.
It doesn't make his opinions wrong. I was right the fact that he got in. But I don't know, it doesn't change his opinion that he didn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yachty's going to be first ballot, too, now.
See, that's what's crazy, and we didn't get into this, is he said, who would take Joe Mauer over Yachty. I think if you're a smart GM whatsoever, you would absolutely take Joe Mauer over Yadier Molina.
I think Joe Mauer certainly had a better career, but I think Yachty, I respect Yachty to a point with, one, longevity. I think that does play a factor here. And one being one of the greatest, if not the greatest, defensive catchers of all time. So I think Yachty, if Mauer's going in first ballot, I'm saying, I have no doubt in my mind that Yadier Molina is a Hall of Famer.
I've flip flopped on Yadier. People that are older, like Tom and Marty, look at Yachty and they say, this is absolutely a Hall of Famer. I used to think that was absolutely silly. I have started to come around because it just depends on what you think the Hall of Fame is. And when you think of the catching position, you do think of guys like Yadier Molina. And that means something, right? And in a shrine that goes to the greatest baseball players of all time, and you think of a certain position, you think of a guy like Yadier Molina. Is he the player that Joe Mauer was? Certainly not. Certainly
See,
not.
that's where, not that we wanted to spend a whole lot of time talking about this today in regards to people, they want to talk about baseball or not, I don't know. But that's where, you can get yourself knee deep into statistics and trying to figure out whether or not you think somebody's worth something significantly more than the other thing. And there's intangibles that go along with baseball that certainly can't be figured out. I don't know if Joe Mauer had the same intangibles as Yadier Molina, but I do know this. Yadier Molina played for a significantly long time for an organization from a foundational standpoint that he was a rock bed. He was the foundation of a franchise that was elite for a long time. He won multiple World Series. He was the reason that they weren't going anywhere for a very long time. Yes, there was other guys involved, but I'm going to tell you something. You give any franchise Yadier Molina and you say, hey, you got a catcher for 20 years that is going to be at least league average, if not better than league average, an elite for 5, 6, 7 years, I guarantee you they're able to build a roster that's pretty damn competitive. And not saying or suggesting or downplaying what Joe Mauer was or is, but you can't say that about his teams.
You look at, I made this allusion that are the Minnesota Twins pretty similar to the San Diego and Los Angeles Chargers in that they consistently have a really good team. They just, for some reason, one way or another, just don't compete in the postseason very well. But that's like Tom was talking about yesterday. If you ask any GM in the league if they'd rather have Dave Parker or Joe Mauer, everyone will take Dave Parker. And I think that was dead wrong because the biggest luxury a team can have is an elite catcher. Is an elite catcher. Like every good team in the league, you look at, well, how's their catching position? Is it good or is it bad? And almost unanimously, they've got a good catcher. If you got a mediocre catcher, you are limiting your ceiling as a team. So yeah, Yadier Molina was a rock bed of a very good team, which is why I then agree that I used to not believe it because you look at his stats and he's a pretty below average hitter.
He wasn't that far off. I think his career OPS was like 90. OPS plus was like 96.
In his prime, he was a really good hitter. Like from age 28 to 32, he was a really good hitter. The rest of his career was a bad hitter, right? So you're nitpicking there, but you're right. Like when you think of good teams and you think of the catching position, you think Yadier Molina, which is why I used to think that he wasn't a Hall of Famer. Now I side with that he is. But the whole Joe Mauer thing, he was clearly a Hall of Famer just because he was such an elite hitter at such a and a pretty good fielder too in his prime at such a valued position that is the catcher.
That's fair. Do you think that C. Trent was extending an olive branch out to Brandon Phillips there with that vote? Do we think that's what it was?
I don't know. I think
because when he mentioned that Brandon Phillips got one vote and Elliot goes, maybe it was C. Trent, I thought to myself, seems like there's a history there that I wouldn't suggest or think to myself, C. Trent, he's definitely the guy that gave him a vote. Was that just like maybe there was a little note written?
I think so.
Behind the scenes.
I think they were coming together there. I think that was
Are they going to Lady and Tramp some kind of?
They might.
Yeah.
They might.
Nick Kirby, I would bet my
One of
life.
Dusty's
C. Trent
toothpicks?
did not give him that vote. Who's the old writer that the Dayton Daily News writer?
I do believe he might have passed away. Is that right?
Okay, so yeah, he did.
Hal McCoy?
Yeah, that's right. He did pass away, so it couldn't have been him. But yeah, I just had a feeling that
that's
it was
a good
someone,
take, Reed.
Well, I was just thinking of guys. I mean, if we're speculating here.
No, I just like that you had to add in, well, it couldn't have been him.
Well, yeah, guess not.
How many voters are there?
400. 424. So, yeah, you have to be a writer, a beat writer of a team for some odd year.
Could have also been a beat writer in Atlanta because he's from Atlanta. I mean, who knows who it was. Right. Do you think good for Brandon Phillips. I mean, does anyone really know nor care? Probably not.
So while we're talking – so
go ahead.
Let me nerd out here for a second. Let me nerd out here about these 3 Hall of Fame selections here. We were talking about Adrian Beltre, and I think his career is so unique that at this moment, we remember Adrian Beltre as one of the greatest third basemen ever, right? Near 100 WAR, 3,000 hits, 400 and something home runs. But before he turned 32, no one thought, if you would have gone back to the year 2010 and asked Tom, asked Marty, hey, you think Adrian Beltre is going to be a Hall of Famer? They would unanimously say, hell no. Adrian Beltre didn't make an all-star game till he was 32. He was actually, in his first 12 years, if you look at OPS Plus, he was a below 100 hitter, he was a below average hitter.
You know what they say about guys that get a lot better towards the end of their careers.
But right. From ages 32 to 36, he was one of the best players in the league, and he continued to do that till he was 40, on top of being an elite defender. Adrian Beltre, I said this to Elliot before we started the show, the first 10 years of his career are similar to a Todd Frazier. He was essentially Todd Frazier until he was 32, 33. And then he got better and continued to do it to where he had 3,000 hits. So that's why it's interesting. And the other thing I got to say about the Todd Helton is go look at the 2000 MVP voting. Todd Helton led the league in batting average, slugging percentage, on base percentage, home runs, RBIs, runs scored, hits, and didn't win the MVP, which is just absolutely preposterous.
Well, that often comes down to one thing and one thing only, right? Is when did you play?
He actually finished.
Phil Mickelson's a pretty good example of that as well. I mean, Phil Mickelson's a guy that probably without Tiger Woods would have been one of the most decorated. He already is a decorated, but he would have been one of the most decorated golfers of all time. He would have been right up there with a Jack. Would have been right up there with Tiger if he played in a different era. Now I think, honestly, Phil kind of gets lost in the shuffle because Phil played with Tiger. And those types of things happen, yes. But the main point I was going to make was oftentimes with the first ballot, it just comes down to who else is on the ballot with you, too. I mean, that's part of the equation. And using the first ballot Hall of Famer as this huge moniker of whether or not you were significantly better than somebody else, I don't really buy into. You had mentioned, obviously, we're going to talk about a little bit more about the AFC Championship weekend. That's great. Good and all that. The one thing I was going to say, though, Todd Helton, to finish out the baseball talk, Todd Helton does seem to open the door a little bit more for Joey Votto. Now it feels like Joey Votto's chance to get in the Hall of Fame has skyrocketed.
Yeah, Joey Votto's going to get in the Hall of Fame. He's 100% going to get.
But there's a lot of people that would argue, similar to Yadier Molina, that it's the Hall of Very Good. It's not the Hall of Fame. Now, whether or not you believe that, I don't know. But again, this is where one thing, whether you like Jim Harbaugh or not, I could care less. There's one thing that Jim Harbaugh said that I liked. Somebody asked him to compare a couple of great players that he coached, and he said he doesn't compare great players because ultimately what ends up happening is you end up trying to tear one down to try to promote the other. And ultimately that's what the Hall of Fame and debating whether or not this guy should get in or that guy should get in does. You're tearing down great players when you really don't need to. It's all an opinion-based thing anyways. Nobody really knows whether or not somebody's specifically way better than another person, depending on errors. I mean, I genuinely have the take, and I know that people are laughing. I think Babe Ruth, you stick the same Babe Ruth. Now, I get it. You can't do this. You stick the same Babe Ruth. You drop him at the University of Southern California right now, maybe he gets run. I don't know.
But
I don't even think the guy plays above AA.
Here's the thing, though. You're probably right, but context matters. Babe Ruth.
Of course it matters.
Right. Babe Ruth grew up with the same opportunities and chance to improve as everyone in his era, and no one dominated an era like Babe Ruth did. Even Barry Bonds, to his success, didn't dominate like Babe Ruth did. Babe Ruth.
I completely agree.
So context matters, and you are right. It's the same reason that if you look at guys that played like a Pistol Pete Maravich or like a Big O, Oscar Robinson, would Oscar Robinson play in today's NBA? Probably not. And if you go back to even like the 70s, like would those guys play in today's NBA? Probably not. Like is a guy like Joe Montana gonna succeed? Gonna be in the NFL? Like is he gonna tear it up like he did back in the 80s? Probably not, because people get better, things evolve. So, and that's context matters, is what I'm saying. Also, will you give me an apology? Because Hal McCoy is still alive.
Say that again.
Hal McCoy is still alive.
Damn.
83 years old.
Well, that's completely on me then.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I think you guys were thinking of John Fay.
John Fay.
John Fay passed.
No, I actually wasn't. That's on me.
And if you guys think that me and Tom got fired up about Joe Mauer,
What?
if I ever get an opportunity to say that Alex Rodriguez is the greatest infielder of all time, I think that'll spark some things, because that's my other hot take, and I absolutely believe that Alex Rodriguez is the greatest infielder of all time.
Do you think that the NFL will ever become one reason why baseball and golf and a couple of other sports, even basketball, is getting to this point now, is becoming so incredibly difficult to be a professional athlete in, is because it becomes a global game, and you have a world aspiring to try to become the best specific player they can be, whether it's golfer, basketball player, I guess obviously football, and by football I mean soccer. The one thing I was going to say is, do you think American football ever gets to that point, and will we be alive to see it?
American football ever starts
World game. World game. Poll question of the day. I'm going to put a death sentence on me right now in front of everybody. 50 years, which is a long time. In 50 years, will I be alive? We'll just say 50 years. You don't have to say if Trace will be alive. In 50 years, will American football be a global game to where there will be more than one quarterback? No, you don't have to put all this. Just put it, will it be a global game, yes or no? But the way I'm going to say it's a global game is if there is a league that's the exact same rules in another country, not Canada, and on top of that, there are two quarterbacks in the league that are not from the United States. Do you think that we'll get to that in 50 years?
No. Yeah, I think the NFL is certainly trying to grow its popularity overseas. So, yeah, I mean, like the NBA before Michael Jordan wasn't a global game. And because of Michael Jordan, now the best players in the league are from other countries because of a guy like Michael Jordan. So, yeah, I think in 50 years, with the world becoming more less isolated, I guess less isolated, not more less isolated.
The Internet's definitely made a big impact
Correct.
On all this, yes.
So, yeah, I think it's certainly going to be a global game. A better question is, do you think it's more likely that the NFL will be a global game, like the top global game, or do you think it's more likely that it is not even the top sport in America in 50 years?
No chance. It'll always be wow. They probably said this about baseball. They probably said this about baseball 50 years ago too, that there's no way that anything will overtake baseball. So I guess I'm going to make a fool of myself in saying I cannot imagine. I just can't imagine it, that football, American football, would not be the top sport in this country unless one thing happens. And the only thing I can think of, and I hope this doesn't happen, is that you have a couple fatalities within the same year. Strictly, specifically, clearly on the football field. Now, they've gotten better at adjusting the rules and equipment becoming better to where you would like to think that wouldn't happen. But the only way that I could see American football becoming, not extinct, but not the most popular game, is because it's become so dangerous that, one, people don't want to play it, and two, the American public becomes disgusted by it. But the reason that it will never happen, in my opinion, is because we are human beings. And for some dumb reason, we gravitate towards violence. The reason that the NFL is as popular as it is, in my opinion, is because of the violence nature that it exists. The reason that boxing 50 years ago was as popular as it was because of violence. It got replaced by UFC because UFC has a better structure, a better, whether you want to argue whether it's a better sport or not, I could care less. But boxing has become political. Boxing has become the best don't fight the best. boxing has become extinct in the United States to a small extent because heavyweights don't exist in the United States like they did in the past. And UFC finds a window of opportunity. And UFC, like it or not, has a much better way of crowning champions than boxing has done in the past 20 years. But the only way that American football doesn't become the most popular thing in this country is how. And if you want to convince me that people aren't going to play because it's too dangerous, I got news for you. As long as you're paying people millions of dollars to play it, people are going to play the sport. That's maybe the most overblown thing that there is in this country right now is that, oh, man, just because the soccer moms and the suburban housewives don't want their little Johnny to go play football, you think that it's going to die? Do you think for a second that's what we're watching on NFL Sundays right now? No. And you can say that that's bad to say, but that's the truth. There will always be, I don't want to say impoverished, that's not the word I'm looking for, but there will always be aspiring young kids that want to find their way out of a situation because they see an opportunity that is a full ride scholarship to play football. And we will always, as a public, love that sport. So I don't know how. Maybe someone can convince me otherwise. How in the world in 50 years is not the biggest? It has to be. How does it not?
How does it not how is it not still the biggest in the United States?
Yes.
It will always be. It will always be. There's no question about it. The health and safety thing is, it's not nothing, but I will say it's part of the risk in all sports. We know there is severe injuries that have happened. There is CTE that is legitimately a real problem. But I think for the best athletes in the country, the risk is the reward is worth the risk. That is what I'd say. And for the other countries, they will never adopt this sport ever. I don't see it. I don't see a way. I think it'll be in other countries, but it won't have like their own league. I think like there might be an NFL team in London in 10 years, but the NFL will not have its own separate leagues in all over the world. That won't happen.
Do you think? Question for the room: do you think that the NFL has already gotten past their biggest concern or the biggest issue they were possibly ever going to have, which is they didn't really take care of their players before? They had this group of players that have come through that everyone knew the game was somewhat dangerous, but they didn't really know the full repercussions. And CTE obviously has become a very, very popular and notable thing, to where if they can get past this little area, that is, they've neglected some athletes, now I would argue if you play football, you are fully knowing the risk going in. You can't. I'm not saying that these guys are playing woe is me. Don't get my words twisted, please. But you cannot play the woe is me card that, rightfully so, a certain group of players certainly can right now on the back end of 20 years from now. Because they've very openly, at least, they've tried to hide it, but they now very openly have admitted, hey, this is a very dangerous sport.
I think that they've weathered that storm of, and unless there's some new disease that percolates from playing football, I think they've weathered that storm. I think actually that there's going to be more improvements to protecting the players. Like you see in practice they wear those paddings on the outside of their helmets. They don't wear them in the games, but almost across the board they wear them on the outside of their helmets. I think that's going to be a regular thing, and I don't know why it isn't already. If you're doing it to protect your brain at practice, I don't know why you're doing it in the game. The reason that they don't do it in the game is because it's not as pretty. It's not as cool to see those Green Bay Packer helmets, the stripes of the Bengals, and all that good stuff. But I think we'll see that. I think he'd still get around to making those helmets pretty with those. But
I don't think. It'll always be a sport. I think they're past the biggest hurdle, like you said. I do find it interesting how in the Olympics they are introducing flag football. So they're introducing the world, as it were, to the sport. Not that the world isn't aware of what's happening with the NFL. Everybody has the internet. But I do think the flag football thing might offer a different solution for those afraid of the risk.
Yeah, the biggest hurdle that football has in growing is simply by the amount of people that it takes to play.
I agree. And equipment.
Yeah, I mean, like basketball, you need a ball and a hoop and 2 guys. 1 guy. I mean, you can go out there and shoot by yourself. You can't do that with football. You need 22 guys at the most. I mean, you can get away with playing with a football and just slinging around in flag football, but it's the fact that it takes so much infrastructure to play football, unlike other sports that are world-renowned, like basketball, like soccer. You could make us. I mean, we could play soccer right here with a football. You just make any box, and that's your goal. And it takes 2 guys, and you can play soccer. Baseball, even if baseball takes some infrastructure, but if you got a ball and you got a bat, you can play. Right? Football, you need so many people. You need so much infrastructure to play at some capacity.
Correct. No doubt. And I mean, whether or not that the world will ever become, my answer is yes. 50 years is a very, very long time. If you look back at just society in general, 50 years ago, what was had to what is had now, significant difference. So I think that we're underestimating, and I don't say we're, but I think the folks that are thinking that it cannot be a global game, I think you're underestimating the amount of money that the NFL has, the amount of, I guess, interest they've already clearly shown. They're playing games that are meaningful games overseas already, putting teams that are playing in this league not at risk, but they're certainly putting them at a disadvantage. Does anybody disagree with the fact that they're already putting teams at a disadvantage by sending them to London, sending them to Germany, and whether or not you want to believe it makes that big of a deal, I don't know. When you fly first class, you're in private airplanes, maybe air travel isn't as big of a deal. But if you're going to convince me that every single game matters in the NFL, and it does, when you are stretching the boundary of competitive advantage a little bit, you're already kind of tilting your hand in the fact that the NFL clearly wants to make this a global game. The question is will the rest of the world enjoy the game? I don't know. I think it will. I really do. It'll start small. It'll start 7-on-7. It'll start flag football. It'll slowly evolve to academies. There's already, kicking academies in Australia that have plenty of kickers that have come over to the NFL from that. Eventually, it will become academies in other countries, similar to baseball. There's plenty of Dominican baseball academies.
I can't wait for our first quarterback from, Lithuania. I can't wait because that's awesome.
Do you think they can handle the pressure?
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. All right.
You have some buy or sell today.
Yeah, get that wallet out. We're gonna buy and or sell. So here we go. We talked about this briefly at the beginning of the show, but we'll rehash the same question. Lamar Jackson can cement himself atop the QB tier. Do you think he's QB number 1 if he wins the Super Bowl? Buy or sell?
I will sell.
All right. You still think?
Patrick Mahomes has got I've always said I think Patrick Mahomes has been a little bit of the system guy, and we all know that. The only thing, and I know that sounds crazy to say, and I will admit maybe I've been wrong on this guy the whole time, but he genuinely has the worst weapons he's ever had around him, and if he finds a way to be competitive in this football game, it's hard for me to take him off the top. So I can't buy that, no.
Right. Well, it's funny. We keep moving back. You keep moving back the Patrick Mahomes goalpost because you said last year.
What'd I do?
If he beats the Philadelphia Eagles on
and that changed. That's when it all changed. I think, and Casey will admit to this, I think I even told Casey, maybe in private because he's the only confidant that I have around here with this whole Patrick Mahomes thing. Everyone else is just a slappy.
I think I'm the only one.
I went to Casey and said, this is getting tough, isn't it? It just is. Patrick Mahomes cemented something last year. Same way Tom Brady did.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's going to continue moving. I will buy this. I actually, my opinions on Patrick Mahomes. I think he's one of the greatest that I've ever seen play the sport. But I think at this very moment that if Lamar Jackson can go out, beat the Chiefs, and beat whoever he beats from the NFC in dominating fashion, not even in dominating fashion, but if they do it in dominating fashion, like they've pretty much beat up on the rest of the NFL this year, then yeah, I don't know how you can take someone with that much that skill set and not say that they're QB number 1.
I'm going to buy it. He's not going to be better than Patrick Mahomes, but he will cement himself as the second quarterback in the league. I think coming into this year, you would have given 100 different. You would have surveyed 100 different NFL fans, rank your top 5 quarterbacks. I think Lamar Jackson probably would have been that 4 or 5 spot every single list. They would have had Herbert ahead of him. They would have had Burrow ahead of him. It's not even a debate. If he were to win a Super Bowl, he's going to win his second MVP, which is going to put him ahead of both those two guys anyway. He's ahead of Allen because of it. 2 MVPs, a Super Bowl, maybe 2 unanimous MVPs in a Super Bowl. I will take Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes at the top 2, and then there is a mile, maybe more than a mile of distance
come on.
between. Oh, it's not close.
Between Josh Allen? Josh Allen's right up there too.
He has 2. Lamar Jackson has 2 MVPs in a Super Bowl. It would not be remotely close.
I think we're discounting Josh Allen, and I think you're also wrong on what you said about if you ask people before the year to rank the quarterbacks. I don't think a whole lot of people would have had Lamar Jackson in the top 5.
That's what I'm saying. And again, that's saying that they're negating the fact that he's a very efficient runner as well as a passer. They call him a running back, and that's that. Drew Garrison in the chat says MVPs are worthless. I would say I disagree, but and I would say everybody else does too. But what do I know? I'm just a young little boy. I think Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, by far and away, if he were to win a Super Bowl, are the best 2 quarterbacks, and the rest aren't close.
I'm not as high on Lamar. I haven't been in his entire career, but he's continued to prove me wrong every single year. He just keeps getting better and better and better. This year, he's proved a lot to me. And I know my shtick about the Browns and my hate for the Ravens gets kind of old. Me being completely serious this week, Lamar would be the best quarterback skill-wise in the NFL. Not the most accomplished, not the most successful, but in terms of skill, in terms of what he brings to you for one game on a football field, Lamar is better than Patrick Mahomes 100% this year.
All right.
100%.
Well, he's gonna have to prove it this weekend.
Yeah,
I have remind me about. I don't want to ruin the segment, so remind me about Josh Allen at the end of the segment.
Okay.
Real quick, there are only 10 people who've won multiple MVPs, just so we're clear. 10 in the history of the sport. I don't know how you would argue that Josh Allen or Burrow or anybody is remotely close to him.
I think Josh Allen is right up there.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah,
What's next one?
I think those 3 would be in a tier of their own. But all right, we'll stick it in the quarterback talk. We'll do my favorite. Brock Purdy is the worst quarterback still playing. I'll start it off. I'll say buy. I'm buying this. I think he's clearly not better than the AFC quarterbacks. He's clearly not better than Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes. So is he better than Jared Goff? No. Trace tried to argue if Jared Goff wins this game, does he deserve to be in the top tier of quarterbacks? I don't know about that, but I certainly think that Brock Purdy is the worst quarterback still playing. I'll go a step further. I think he was the worst quarterback playing last week. But I'm buying.
I'm going to buy. I think Brock Purdy stinks. I think that's a fraudulent quarterback that has been blessed with the best system, scheme, and weapons in the NFL. Listen, I give him credit for capitalizing on the great people that he has surrounding him. But if you're telling me I need a quarterback to win me a game, I'm not going to pick him out of the other 4.
I'm going to buy this. I'm going to buy this, but I also think it's not a hard buy, but it's an overreaction, clearly, to the fact that he did not play well last week, but he made some plays when it mattered. But he played pretty bad, if we're being honest.
He did until that final drive.
You shouldn't be able to win a game or get credit for winning a game and play as bad as Brock Purdy had. The last person that played really as bad as he did and got credit for winning a football game, although it gets brought up, is Ben Roethlisberger when he won his first Super Bowl. That being said, I think you guys are overreacting here a little bit with Brock Purdy. To act like this guy hasn't been pretty damn good, I think is being a little disingenuous. That said, I am going to buy this. He is the worst of the 4.
I am going to sell. I think that award goes to Jared Goff, but that, again, that gets overblown because I think Jared Goff is right there. I think he's good enough to win a Super Bowl. I just think that Brock Purdy, I'd rather have his skill sets than Jared Goff. If they're on even teams, Brock Purdy's going to perform just a little bit better.
What'd you just say?
If they're on even teams.
If they're on even teams. I thought you said they were on even teams. I was like, well, that's a take.
No, they're not on even teams. But if they were on even teams, I do believe Brock Purdy would perform just a little bit better. I think he's, I don't know. I would have to go back and look at it. I haven't really looked at it, but I don't feel like Jared Goff has had very many game-winning drives this year. Brock Purdy just doesn't have enough opportunities to really look at. So I don't know. From my
Does Brock Purdy have game-winning drives other than the one last week?
no,
I'm pretty
that's
sure-
the only one, but that's really the only opportunity that he's had to make one of those.
I was gonna say because I think like famously
The other
49ers
games that were just not even close, like losing the Bengals, losing to the Eagles,
Right.
the Vikings game. Actually, he didn't. He threw an interception on
They
that.
missed the
on
field.
that
They missed the
drive.
field goal against the Browns.
I don't know. I like the skill set that Brock Purdy brings. I think he's more mobile. Jared Goff, he has to sit in the pocket, and if he gets any pressure at all, it's not going to go to the right guy. Whereas Brock Purdy at least tries to make the right throw, but is not as accurate. I don't know. It depends on which one you would rather take there.
Brock Purdy's not a bad quarterback,
Yeah.
right? Like
He's not a bad. No,
he's
not
just
a bad
not.
quarterback.
I don't. Why? I
I
guess
think
in
he was
a
the worst
way.
quarterback that played last week. Like I think he's worse than Baker Mayfield.
You lose.
That's
no, not happening.
I think the 49ers would be better with Baker Mayfield than Brock Purdy.
That's just wrong.
But I like Baker Mayfield. You're putting me in a blender here. Okay. Here's the thing with this NFL quarterback thing. This is what I said at the beginning of the year to a certain extent about Jake Browning. I think a lot of these guys are pretty good, pretty serviceable. The
league has never had better quarterbacks.
All these
talent.
quarterbacks-
I
That's
just think that
without a
the delta between most of these quarterbacks is not as big as we want to make it out to be. I do, of course. Yes, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. I don't know. There's a gap there. But my point is like, you're gonna hate me for saying this. I just don't think that there's as big of a difference between Joe Burrow and Jared Goff as we want to make it out to be. I don't think there's as big of a difference between Lamar Jackson and Brock Purdy as we want to make it believe. Is there a difference? Yes. But I don't think that's as significant as we want it to be, personally, because it's an easier talking point. It's easier just to say, oh, they don't have a good quarterback. But Brock Purdy has shown that he's serviceable with inside of the system they play within. And if it was super, super easy for anyone to do, then I don't think we'd have as many quarterback issues as we do in the league. What we have teams that are dysfunctional. We have systems that are broken. We have people trying to rush quarterbacks to be something they're not before they are. And then all of a sudden we act like, oh, they're the problem. And I'm a Packers fan. But at some point, is the rest of the league going to say to themselves, you know what? Maybe we should just try to adopt what the Packers have done, which is let's go find a guy we think is very, very good. Let's make them sit for 3-4 years. And then once we feel like they grasp the whole thing, we aren't just going to throw them to the wolves. Yes, there's a Joe Burrow every so often. There's a CJ Stroud every so often to where they come out in the league and they're ready to go and they look the part. But how many times have guys like Baker Mayfield have got put in positions, maybe you can convince me like Justin Fields, Bryce Young is going to be put in that category now, to where they play on a bad team or they play on a team that's not ready to have them produce, and then we cast a shadow on them and say they're bad. That happens more than we want to give credit for.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. But
Next buy or sell.
Next buy or sell. We'll go over to the AFC. The Chiefs have the least to lose this weekend.
Ooh. Who starts that off? Elliot?
I'll start it. The Chiefs have the least to lose this weekend. I will buy. I don't think they lose anything this year. And again, this is just not to be what Reed is, a Cubs, Chiefs, Notre Dame, Slappy. Steelers, Slappy over here. But Patrick Mahomes and this team, clearly the offensive side of the ball has not been what they've been in the past. They've had 40-plus dropped balls this season, which leads the league by far. So, no, I don't think they have any – Patrick Mahomes certainly has nothing to prove. This would just be an add on the legacy, add on the dynasty that they've created in Kansas City. So I would agree.
Trace?
I've not bought anything more than that one.
Right.
Yep. That one's a pretty easy one for me. This Chiefs team's already overachieved. They have. It pains me to say that. And I'm so sick and tired of seeing them. I'm so sick and tired of hearing about how Patrick Mahomes is great. I just am. And maybe it's hatred. Maybe it's bias. But
exactly what it is.
definitely seems like to me, someone convinced me otherwise, that these guys get every single benefit of the doubt known to mankind. I just want something to not go their way. Like, I want
a game-winning.
I want on the final drive, Patrick Mahomes to get sacked and there not be a holding penalty. I want him to get sacked and there not be roughing the passer. We'll see if it happens. It's not going to. They're going to go to the Super Bowl.
Casey Root?
The only other team that doesn't have much to lose is the Lions, and I feel like they've overachieved this year. But I don't think it's – I think, like most of us agree, I mean, the Chiefs have way overachieved, and they don't need another Super Bowl win to cement anything. They're still going to be regarded as a great team. So yeah, I think I'm gonna buy this. Chiefs they got nothing to lose here.
Opposite way is the Niners, right?
I was gonna say, the better question is who has the most to lose, and it's pretty clearly the Niners based off of how weak the NFC is, how they've looked like they've dominated that, and you have some very serious conversations to be had.
And they got one of the best quarterbacks.
Well, that's the other take about Brock Purdy that I have is he's probably the worst position on their team, but at least position group. But, yeah, clearly the Niners have the most to lose. The Chiefs have the least to lose. If you're the Ravens, you start asking, like, man, if this team couldn't get it done, who could? Lions going to look at themselves and say, will we ever get back to this position? I think they will, not to tease the next buy or sell. But, the 49ers clearly have the most to lose to where if they don't get it done this year, they don't have to win it all. They've got to win this NFC Championship.
I think they have to win it all.
Okay, fair enough. Which, by the way, dead wrong. I was dead wrong. I looked at the look-ahead lines. 49ers would be favored by, regardless of what team they play. So I was dead wrong on that one. The final buy or sell is, and I've talked them up a lot, buy or
Chiefs.
sell. Lions are perennial contenders. I'm buying this. I think this Lions team is very good. I think that they are good. Like everyone wanted to talk about how good that Texans team was. I still think there's a lot of holes on that Houston Texans team. I watched this Detroit Lions team play. They've got good weapons. They've got all-pro linemen. They've got a good pass rush. They've got some decent guys in the secondary. Got good running backs. Like, this is a pretty good roster, a really good roster. Casey alluded to it earlier. He said, listen, they're like the 49ers, just probably a step below. This is a really good roster. I'm buying that the Lions are here to stay in the NFC.
I'm going to sell, and that is because I don't believe in Detroit. I don't believe in their sports teams. I certainly don't believe in the Detroit Lions. I think they've been a failure of an organization for quite some time. And at some point, you stick with the trend, and the trend is, and it has been for many a decades, is that they are a joke. So I think at some point, it won't be this year. I think they've proved that they are a very good team this season. But eventually, I do think this window, this little magic run that they have in one of the world's worst divisions, will come to an end.
Define perennial. That seems to be a very important thing.
Like, I'm not...
How many years we talking?
I mean, like, for the conceivable 3-4 years, like the
Will they win the NFC North more than 2 times in the next 4 years?
I guess what I'm asking is do you think that these team can be considered an NFC champion for the next few years? Like, will they be competing for an NFC championship game? I'm not saying maybe in that game. Like, the Bills compete for an AFC championship, even though they haven't been to the game, because they're one of the best teams in the AFC. Do you think the Lions are consistently going to be in the postseason and winning games in the postseason?
Yeah, it's borderline for me because I think that their division, and again,
it's about to get a lot tougher.
I think it is. I think the Packers are going to be pretty damn good, but I also think the Bears are close. I think the Bears, no matter who they go with, I'm telling you, the Bears team itself is better than people want to give it credit for. They have a quarterback that's not been really that good, and they are within a 3-point spread on almost every single game they play. So you're telling me they get the number 1 pick, and then they have another first round pick. like at some point the Bears are going to be pretty decent. So for that reason, I think the Lions will end up being a team that's like the Lions might be. They'll be like the I don't want to say the Chargers, because I think they might be a little bit better than the Chargers, but I could see them being like the Chargers, where they're supposed to be good, and they had one good run, although the Chargers really didn't have any good runs.
Chargers have been to the postseason one time, and
they have, but I'm just saying in general, when people bring up the Chargers, they give them a lot of credit, similar to why I think Josh Allen gets way too much credit than he does. But I'm going to say no. I'm selling that. Casey?
Lions, the next 3 or 4 years being playoff contending team. I'll buy that. I think, like I said, they are like a step below the 49ers. I think they've done a lot of retooling, building, and I mean, I called it last year, saying that was a playoff-worthy roster. They just hadn't figured it out just quite yet. And the guys that they got this last draft, I mean, all of them have really been phenomenal. Gibbs, we got the Sam Laportas, we have Jack Campbell. I mean, the list goes on and on. Brian Branch, like those guys. They've just hit a lot of good picks this last couple of years, and it's hard to believe that they won't get it right again with the rate that they're at. So, yeah, I'll buy it. I think they're a playoff-worthy team, NFC championship-worthy team next couple of years.
All right. Trace, you had a take on Josh Allen, and based on what you said just a minute ago, it's going in a much different direction than I thought you were going to go in.
Really, I just think that Josh Allen gets way more credit than is deserved. The guy. If we're going to give precedent to people that do things in regards to winning, he's not done that. Like, you can't give him a pass from the year prior either, when the Bengals came in and slaughtered them as well. Like, he's won nothing. And he plays in a terrible division. He has won nothing and plays in a terrible division. And you can say whatever you want about Miami, but they have a horrible quarterback in Tua.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Tua, I've come to realize, in my opinion, cannot win you a Super Bowl unless he has a world-class offense around him. And on top of that, he gets to play in Miami, not only for the first round, the second round, and the championship game, but also they better hope that the game is also played in Miami for the Super Bowl. So I guess Josh Allen, some of it is a matter of whether or not you get even a chance to be in the postseason. And Josh Allen plays in a division that should allow him to play in the postseason every single year. And he continues to be, and I'm not saying him specifically, but he continues to not get over the proverbial hump. And yes, he played great, if you want to call it that. But he still didn't get it done.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I talked about earlier in the show, is there's a lot of similarities to what Josh Allen has done in the early years of Peyton Manning, where Peyton Manning didn't win a playoff game until his 7th year in the league. If you go back over the last 4 years, this current iteration of the Buffalo Bills, only one team in the league has won more games. In fact, only one team in the league over the last 4 years has won more playoff games than the Buffalo Bills. Only one team. That's the Kansas City Chiefs. And yeah, they keep running into the same Kansas City Chiefs. They've lost to them now 3 times in the postseason. But I think that
They didn't run into him last year.
He didn't. I mean,
they got bullied and demolished.
Yeah, against a
with
very
the Cincinnati Bengals.
Against a team that at that point had won 10 games in a row, was very, very good, and was a few plays away from getting to the Super Bowl for the second.
You talking about the same team that was a week removed from Tyler Huntley being an idiot and being bounced in the first round of the playoffs at home?
Yeah.
Yeah, that same team.
Yeah, that team that won that game. Yeah, that team.
I understand that, but you can't sit here and tell me that team was some freaking some dynasty.
That was the best Bengals team in my lifetime, and I don't even think you can deny that. That was without a doubt the best Bengals team in my lifetime. They won 12 games, better than the Super Bowl team. Super Bowl team won.
You don't think the year that Andy Dalton got hurt, that team wasn't better?
Yeah, because the quarterback play. Also, Josh Allen in his postseason career averages 270 yards passing, 21 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Oh, yeah, and he also averages rushing the ball about 65 yards a game rushing. So Josh Allen is undoubtedly a top 3 quarterback in the league. Josh, the Buffalo Bills are one of the best teams that we've seen over the past 4 years. I just mentioned that they just keep running into the same buzzsaw that is the best dynasty that we've seen since the Patriots.
The Bills' windows seems to be closing.
They do have some contract issues. There's no doubt about that. The Von Miller contract, we talk, like we always, Tom, you got to go out and get these big names. And what do the Bills go out and do? They get out and get this Super Bowl champion coming off a hot year in Von Miller. And that Von Miller contract looks absolutely atrocious. It's probably the worst contract in the league.
McDermott's going to get fired, too.
I don't know if McDermott's going to get fired.
Seems like the right time to get rid of him, if I'm going to be honest. It seems like all these, and again, you can call them failures, not call them failures, these seasons. But obviously, the end, your end goal in each season is to win the Super Bowl, to win your last game. And they have not done that for quite some time now. And I think there is a time for a change because when you have one of the best quarterbacks in the world, there is added pressure, and they do.
The reason that I like Sean McDermott keeping his job is almost the exact opposite reason of why I want Nick Sirianni to lose his job. Like I've said this multiple times on the show, that I thought what happened to the Philadelphia Eagles is the worst example of coaching in the NFL maybe that I've ever seen. Like you guys can laugh at me. I think Hugh Jackson or Brandon Staley takes that 10-1 Eagles team and does something better than what Nick Sirianni did in the second half of the year. The Buffalo Bills were 7-6, and this story comes out that charged the internet about Sean McDermott quoting 9/11 in the locker room, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, this is terrible. This dude clearly should lose his job, right?" And what happens? They rattle off 6 of their last 7, win a playoff game, go down and had a chance to tie the Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional round, and they roar back, and they play better after that. That's great coaching. That's getting a team on your side.
So who are you really crediting then? Because it doesn't sound like you're crediting McDermott. It seems like you're crediting somebody else.
What are you saying?
No, I'm just asking. Who are you crediting?
Well, what are you insinuating?
I'm not gonna insinuate anything. It just seems like based on what you just said on who he was using to, pump the team up. It seems like that.
Do you know that story?
I know the story.
He did it 3 years ago.
Oh, I'm aware of the story. I'm just saying it just seems like.
So when a story like that breaks, you can crumble as a clubhouse, and what happens? They get better.
I agree.
He didn't have that speech that day.
It was a powerful speech.
Do you think though that it really ultimately matters in regards to what a coach says or doesn't say? I sometimes this league seems to be ran mostly by players, and scheme definitely matters. I'm not trying to downplay it, but sometimes you just have a pretty decent.
Players deserve credit, not Andy Reid.
What's that?
So players deserve credit, not coaches. Patrick Mahomes deserves the credit, not Andy Reid.
I do think Patrick Mahomes deserves credit. Yes, I do. Okay. I also think Patrick Mahomes has been put in a great situation. I think Josh Allen, we'll see what he is. We'll see what he ends up being. He just gets put on this pedestal. I mean, you're putting him there. You're putting him there with Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. What does he have that
do you watch him?
Dude, yeah, I watch him. He turns the ball over.
Okay, so why? Well, time out.
I mean, take as many timeouts as you need.
At this moment, why would Lamar Jackson be held over Josh Allen?
Because he's won.
Won what?
He's won. I guess my question is, he's
won what?
Has he ever been to the AFC Championship game?
Josh Allen, yeah.
He has.
Yeah.
Then I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
He lost to the Chiefs?
Lost to the Chiefs. They lose to the Chiefs every year except for last year. AFC Championship game loses to the Chiefs.
That was the game. So to be clear, this is where my brain's obviously a pretzel right now. You're telling me that that they blew the game against the Chiefs to get to the Super Bowl the year that the back and forth with 13 seconds left?
That was in the divisional round.
Okay, then it was a year before that.
Correct.
Got to use the MVP thing, Coach.
Okay.
The MVPs would have helped you out there.
What's that? No, listen. If you're one of the, I know the MVPs with
Lamar
Lamar
Jackson has 2 playoff wins. Josh Allen has 5.
I also
Lamar
understand.
has 2 MVPs. Josh Allen has.
He has 0. I get that,
Right,
but I
he's
also
second
think that
twice.
that suggesting that Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are the same player. I'm not buying that.
I'm just saying, like, if we're gonna like say that Josh Allen doesn't get put in the same category as Lamar Jackson because Lamar Jackson has achieved more, to me that sounds a little freaking silly because they've had the exact same career other than the one MVP that Lamar Jackson's won, and presumably the second.
So if Lamar Jackson wins this weekend, are you gonna separate him?
I've already said that if Lamar Jackson wins the Super Bowl, he's the top of the quarterback chain. But I still think that Josh Allen's right there.
I just don't. When I watch the football game,
And when you
I
watch,
don't see Josh Allen anywhere near Lamar Jackson. I just don't, man.
when I watch football, there are
Well, because he makes some fun plays. He does some whirly birds and runs around and gets 7 yards on a scramble.
Is he a fidget
what
spinner?
does Lamar Jackson do?
Is
Lamar-
Josh Allen a fidget spinner? Is Josh Allen a fidget spinner?
Who has scored more touchdowns over the past in the last 4 years than Josh Allen? Nobody.
I'll tell you what. One thing Lamar Jackson has to do. He has to play the Browns, the Bengals, and the Steelers. I'll tell you who.
fair point.
I'll tell you who he doesn't.
That's a fair
I'll
point.
tell you who he doesn't get to play. The Dolphins.
Played him this year.
The Dolphins
What's that?
have won 10 games in the last 2 years.
Yeah, and there are nobodies when it comes
the
to the
Patriots
tournament.
who won 10 games 2
There's
years
never
ago.
been a bigger fraud in the NFL. It is the Miami Dolphins. What about the Jets? They were pretty good.
Jets are historically pretty bad.
Good job, Trace.
Who's the other team in their division? Oh, yeah, that's right. The Patriots. When they lost Tom Brady, magically the Bills became good. That must have been a coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills made the postseason when Tom Brady was still there.
His last year?
I mean, yeah. You're saying they were good after he left.
I'm just
they
saying.
made the postseason.
My point
before.
is that it's just not the same division either, which matters a lot to me.
I don't know how. In all seriousness, as we're talking about this Josh Allen thing, I think the craziest take that you've said is that you watch Josh Allen and you're not amazed by him.
I think he has great plays, yes, but I'm not putting him.
Have you been watching him then? Because he's up there like Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and then the guy actually that I fall in love with too is Matt Stafford. Does similar incredible stuff.
I don't know. We'll find out if I'm wrong. He gets to play longer. Hopefully he has a long, injury-free career, and we'll get to see what Josh Allen ultimately ends up becoming. I'm just not going to put him in the same category as Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. Not happening. Under any circumstance. Don't care. I don't care if Lamar Jackson loses this weekend. Don't care. But
I'm pretty sure if Lamar Jackson wins the Super Bowl, he still has a worse playoff record than Josh Allen.
what are you going off of percentage, I guess? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
All right. Gotcha. Fair enough. So would you do me a favor? Would you do me a favor?
Fewer losses,
Would you,
too. He'd have
would you,
fewer, he'd fewer
would you
wins,
humor me just for a
fewer
second?
wins.
And I don't know this off the top of my head, so I could be made a fool right here in front of everyone,
Swing
as
it.
I've
I'm
already done
excited.
today.
I'm excited.
I've already thought someone's passed away. Wasn't the case. Didn't know that
Josh Allen made the AFC
Josh Allen made the AFC Championship game. But just must have flown right over the radar. Must have not been a big enough of a performance
Sling
for me
it.
to
I'm
remember.
ready. I am ready.
Who has he beaten in the postseason?
I'll tell you.
Skylar Thompson.
Yeah. Will you please do that for me? Name the quarterbacks he's beaten.
I think they beat the Titans once.
He has beaten a guy, I don't know, named Lamar Jackson.
You sure Lamar Jackson wasn't hurt?
Let's pull up these stats when they played head-to-head.
Just want to make sure.
Lamar Jackson, 14 of 24,
It's pretty bad.
164 yards, 34 rushing.
Damn.
Okay.
So
Good
when
news.
they played head-to-head in the postseason, Josh Allen's won. He has
Damn.
more playoff wins. He has
You
more
coulda had
regular
it.
season wins.
You
He
coulda had
scores
it.
more than Lamar
Keep
Jackson.
going, though.
You were
Keep
so,
going.
You were so close, and then you lost it there. You lost it all right there.
Who else? You don't want to
wanna-
name the
you
other
wanna-
ones, though? You don't want to name the other ones, obviously.
Okay.
Your biggest asset's the two MVPs, and you just refuse to use them. You got them in your back.
I don't
pocket
need to.
there.
He's going to be an AFC champion this year.
He beat future Hall of Famer Phillip Rivers.
Gotcha.
That's when Philip was really bad.
He beat the New England Patriots.
Was that Phillip on the Colts?
Yeah.
Oh, that was really bad, Phillip.
Gotcha.
Beat
All
Sky
right.
Tom.
You know, it turns into like what I said before. You start to tear down everybody when you try to compare two greats. Listen, Josh Allen's a good player. I'm not going to put him in the same category as those guys. Simple as that. We'll find out what ultimately ends up becoming. Today's Wednesday. There is box lunch, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
What's on box lunch?
Me.
Yeah, it's just.
What's your biggest category?
Well, I mean, I have to go look at them again, but I have them all. I have them all saved. So come on and join.
My voice is about to be
Australian
completely
Open
gone.
tennis. That's what we're talking
Completely
about.
gone.
Your pride should be gone after that last 15
Ah,
minutes.
listen, I like I said, I don't know. I'm not a history buff on the Buffalo Bills.
And we're going to talk about the NL Central too.
So, my apologies. NL
Everybody
Central.
else. NL Central.
Yeah.
So, despite all the facts
Fun
that I
division.
just threw at you, are you gonna dig your heels into Josh Allen's not up there with Lamar? Or are you?
Don't believe that he is. No.
Okay.
No. And
Based
you know
off
what?
Based off your eyes at this point, because all the facts are thrown out.
Well, you don't want to you don't want to use the MVPs, which is fine. That's fine.
There it is. You got it.
No, it's not even just that.
How
It's
you
like
did it.
it's not even just that.
He had it in his pocket.
Right.
Chatterbox Reds tonight, 9 p.m. We got Craig, we got Bryce, we got Nick, and Reds in 4. We'll see if they can come together and debate whether Stuart Fairchild should be an everyday right fielder for
Right.
the Cincinnati Reds.
I don't think that he will be. No.
No, I wouldn't say so.
I think it's safe to say that
I think
he
Nick would say he is, though.
probably shouldn't be.
I did have a letter. We didn't get to it today. We'll get to it tomorrow. I promise you.
Who was the letter from?
It was from, I believe it was from Little Pete, from Mrs. Rose's class.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I love
So
that.
I think Tom's going to really like that one tomorrow.
Tom's going to walk out of here if you start bringing up Hall of Fame stuff again.
Well, that's what we're going to do.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to my raspy voice all day. Box lunch.
Sounds great.
Box lunch is next. And yes, Lindsay's okay.
I don't know, Everett.
See you, everybody.